What's up, guys? My name is Dakota Wint, and this is a Place for Humans podcast live from Detroit, Michigan, in the United States of America. And it's funny, actually. Somebody parked a stolen car outside of my house right now. The boys are outside. There's about three boys out there, not children, but police officers. Out there right now in front of my house. I have no idea why someone parked a stolen car right in front of my house. And when I say right in front of my house, I mean like if I go upstairs and look out my window right now, there's a stolen car sitting there. So growing up here is crazy. Detroit's a wild place. I didn't go out there and ask. Well, my sister actually told me. My sister went out there and asked what was going on. Let's light this candle, guys. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm lighting a candle for those of you guys that aren't watching me on YouTube. So, I don't know. Growing up here in Detroit was weird. And, oh yeah, check this out. I want to show you guys this thing. If I can find a spot for this incense. We're getting freaky today, boys. We're lighting an incense and a candle. Getting real intimate. Okay, we'll put that right there. It might choke me out, but we all gotta die someday. So I want to give a shout out to Rav Vast Drum. They sent this drug for me. Drum. See where my head's at? I just got incense all over it. But Rav Vast Drum, they sent me this hang drum. I think that's what it's called, a hang drum or a hand drum or something like that. But this thing is so beautiful. Let me play you guys a little something. You guys are gonna want one of these once you hear it. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3. I could get lost in playing that thing. Whew. Rav Vast Drum. They just sent it to me. So shout out to those guys. I think they're from Russia. And this thing, it's really nicely made. Oh, I hope those police aren't knocking on my door. Those dogs are barking. So yeah, shout out to Rav Vast and shout out to the Detroit police officers that are ruining this podcast. I'm about 10 minutes outside of Detroit, about 10 minutes outside the city. And, man, my high school was wild. Can't even explain it. My high school was, well, to put it into, that right there, that little stutter, that little lack of English is an example of my high school education. About 60% of the people just didn't graduate. And I'm one of the people. I didn't graduate from high school. I don't know if people know that, but I just dropped out and I don't know, just told myself I would figure it out. And sorry that it sounds so loud when I breathe. God. I got real depressed in high school. I had a friend named Danny, and we weren't like the best of friends or anything like that, but we hung out and. You know, we would go to shows together and or just hang out wherever together, you know. And Danny took a bunch of drugs and, you know, it didn't wake up. And I was really young when that happened. And I was actually straight edge from the time I was like 13 until I was like 21. I wasn't like straight edge at 21, but during my youth, I was a really punk rock kid that was really into being sober because, you know, growing up here, I looked around and I saw what drugs did to people, and it was just like, I could just see that I didn't want that kind of lifestyle. I see it breaks people apart and changes the way they act. And Danny was one of the people that inspired me to be straight edge. He had 3 X's tattooed on the back of his leg when we were like 15. You know, and he was a little bit older, so I thought he was cool. He was maybe like 17, and I was like 15. And I was like, oh man, is that tattoo real? He's like, yeah, this tattoo's real, you idiot. I was like that little weird kid, little emo kid that was trying to fit in with the hardcore kids. And Yeah, I don't know. So he passed away, and that made me really messed up in school. I couldn't really focus, and I don't know. It made me go down this spiral of like life doesn't even matter. How can anything matter when it's so fragile? Like nothing is permanent. So how can anything matter? And if my homies can just be taken away from me just so quickly, how can anything matter? How can anything I do matter when I'm just gonna simply die one day, you know? However, it's just, you know, you just go to sleep and you don't wake up. And, I don't know. Yeah, in my high school was crazy. We had, lunch fights all the time. I don't know if you guys had lunch fights in your school. Or, you know, like if you watch a movie of some crazy, unrealistic high school that has these food fights all the time, that was my actual high school. We had food fights all the time, and you would know when it was going to happen. It would be like a slow motion scene in a movie. You would just, you might hear some commotion, and you'll look over real quick, and you'll just see in slow motion a chocolate milk just flying across the room, and smash. And then you'll hear someone scream, a table will flip over, chairs will start just flying everywhere. It'd be wild. There was this one kid, I remember this kid, we used to call him Nugget. He was a freshman when I was like I made it to a senior year before I dropped out, which is kind of stupid if you think, you know, you made it to senior year, you idiot, just graduate. But I was too rebellious. But anyways, there was this kid, and I don't know his name. He was a redhead kid, and he was actually kind of a dick to me online. After, I guess this is probably why. I don't know if he actually knew this, but I used to call him Nugget with my friends because he choked on a chicken nugget, and we had to call the ambulance, and he had to be taken out of the lunchroom in a stretcher. Nugget, that was that kid, and he was mean to me, but maybe he heard that I was calling him Nugget. But chew your food, you animal. So. Oh, yeah. I don't know if you guys have senior pranks at your high school. We had a crazy senior prank. I remember it was like noon, right? And I already knew this day was going to start off crazy. I used to take the bus to school. So I show up to school. It's already off because when you show up to the school, the front lawn of the school has plastic forks everywhere. It just is like confusing a little bit. You show up to school and you're like, what the hell happened here? It's just a bunch of plastic forks. So you're automatically confused, and you know something wild's about to happen, or something wild did happen. So we go inside the school, and I think we make it till about noon, and someone pulls the fire alarm. So at this point, I'm like, oh yeah, baby, it's time. It's rock and roll. It's showtime, baby. This is what I'm talking about. And we all have to evacuate the classroom, obviously, even though everyone, including the teachers, knows that it's just, we were expecting it. You know, everyone was waiting around just like, all right, just because I'm telling you, my school was wild. It was called John F. Kennedy High School. And so we all leave the classrooms, and there's fish oil everywhere in the hallways, like oil, slippery oil. So everyone that's running out of the classroom is just falling and eating shit as they try to evacuate this potentially dangerous fiery situation. And me and one of my best friends, Petra, we were out there. We met up with each other. We saw each other, right? And we met up right in front of the art classroom. And that's Miss Grasnack's classroom. She had the real long arm hair, but she was real nice, beautiful lady. Miss Grasnack, shout out to you, honey. I don't know why I called her honey. She was like 70 years old. That's actually not a bad thing to say. So me and Petra, we met up right in front of this thing, and there was a girl that was kind of slowly making her way to the hallway because she was in crutches. You know, poor girl. She was in some crutches. And me and Petra, we looked at each other. We made eye contact, and we were like, "This is it." We knew what was going to happen with a girl on crutches versus oil. You're probably not going to win if you're on crutches. I mean, you might if you're one of those like practicing for Ninja Warriors. But this girl wasn't practicing for Ninja Warriors. She was just a child in maybe 9th grade practicing art. And this wasn't what she signed up for. She walked out, instantly fell, and just right on her. She fell forward, too, which was the worst part. Just fell right on her face. And it was funny, I'm not going to lie. But, you know, There was a part of me that feels bad, especially saying that out loud. I do feel bad for her. Well, she didn't get hurt, but, she was already in pain anyway, so. Yeah, that was great. Oh, and then there was fish. Someone put fish inside the toilets of the bathrooms. So everything just smelled like fish. And we all had to go out in the football field and until the school sorted it out. I think we ended up just going home. And a lot of the times, that's what I would do. I would actually, as soon as I got my license, that's when it went down. I started skipping school because my mom would wake me up for school. I'd get up, and I would just drive to my grandma's house and pass back out, go to sleep. My grandma didn't care. She's my homie. She didn't care. She'd make me breakfast. And, I'd just fall asleep, or I'd go to school, and I'd make it till about lunchtime. And most of the time, I'd just hang out in the gym. But, yeah, I'd make it till about lunchtime, and then I would just, I'd wait for the opportunity. Like, I'd go to the bathroom, raise my hand, I gotta go to the bathroom. And then the bathroom was right by the doors that you entered when you had your car, like the student parking lot. And, I would just wait for the opportunity. No security guards there, and I would just leave. And I remember one time I came back to school, like, after 3 months of not going, and it was like showing up on an alien planet. I was walking, and everyone was looking at me, too, like I was an alien. Like, oh, shit, Dakota's back. It's like a new kid almost, except I wasn't new. People just thought, like, I don't know what people thought. But it was always exciting, when you didn't see someone for a long time and they come back, and you're like, oh, shit, you don't go here anymore, and now you're back. What's going on? And I remember going to my classes like nothing, and the teacher was like, you don't go here anymore. You can't just not go to school for 3 months and just show up to class like you still go here. So I had to leave, and it was basically my high school experience. And I remember one time actually in elementary school, it's always been so ghetto just growing up. There was this kid, Jeremy, and he was like white and Puerto Rican or something like that, because he would always cuss at me in Spanish or something like that. And I remember what he would say, because I thought he was cool. Even though he was mean to me, I always thought he was cool. He was kind of like, he was a child, but also a man, He had the body of a child, but he had the Spanish vocabulary of a man, of a drunk Spaniard, a colonized Spaniard. You know what I'm saying? He used to say something like, puto govas, bitimate. And he even gave it like that slang. And we were like in 5th grade, we're little kids. We're maybe 9 years old at this point. And that was my influence growing up. Was little Jeremy, the man baby. And, growing up in Detroit kind of forces you to be a man when you're 8 or 9 sometimes. You know what I'm saying? You got to be confronted with some crazy situations. And Jeremy, this is a rough podcast. I'm sorry I keep bringing it to death, but Jeremy actually, I feel like I'm just a little too lighthearted to deliver this, but Jeremy and his whole family got murdered. Someone walked into his house and they shot his entire family and left his nephew just in the crib alive, his baby nephew. And he was maybe 16. We were all maybe like 16 when that happened. And that messed me up a little bit too. So I think all these situations like that really forced me to just like, how can you go to high school when you're confronted with like real situations like that, I saw through the veil of I don't care about reading what's that? The Crucible. I don't care about reading the Crucible and about the Salem witch trials. Jeremy's out here cussing at me in Spanish and then accidentally getting shot. He was a cool guy, So R.I.P. Jeremy. We weren't too good of friends after we grew up. He kind of went down a different lifestyle than I did, obviously. And that sucks when you choose those lifestyles like that. When you choose that sort of thuggish gangster that lifestyle, and it's really easy to get sucked into it when it's just kind of all you know. And a lot of my friends got sucked into that lifestyle, just drugs and just guns. My best friend, we used to call him Fat Dylan. He's my best friend, my homie, and he's actually not fat at all anymore. He's tall and handsome. He really came together. But Dylan, he got shot in the head selling weed. He's an idiot. He was selling weed. He grew up now. He's not slanging like that anymore. But he was selling weed, and someone shot him in the back of the head, and he lived. He was fine. But yeah. So I don't know. And that was my best friend. You know, he was just over here the other day, and he used to live around the block, but he moved now. And I remember one time we were outside of Dylan's house, and there was another Jeremy there. And we were all kind of getting into MMA. 'Cause I was hanging out with a bunch of hardcore kids, like Dylan, and Dylan's dad was kind of like a biker, and in like the original punk. His dad was like an original punk rock hardcore dude, hanging out in, you know, Detroit in the 80s or whatever. And yeah, so we were all hanging out in front of Dylan's house. He got a little field right there. There's a baseball field by his house across the street. So we were all playing out there, wrestling, because we were getting into MMA, because we thought that if we learned how to fight, that maybe we could mosh harder or something like that. So we were all just sparring with each other. And by sparring, I mean just like we put gloves on and we would just beat the living shit out of each other. And Dylan's like, he's like 5'11", 6 foot tall. He's a big guy. So I wasn't sparring with him. I was sparring with Jeremy. And Jeremy, he's not that he's much bigger than me, but he was a few years older than me. And yeah, so me and Jeremy fought each other, and he just pretty much just punched me and just beat me up. I don't think I got one punch in, and he just beat me up in front of everybody. There's probably 5 people there, 6 people, and I just looked like a complete idiot. You know, I'm not much of a fighter. But Jeremy, these guys they really took it serious, and they're still doing it today. And I'm talking about, this was when we were 15, 16. This is probably 10 years ago. And they're all like serious jiu-jitsu heads now, which is cool, I guess. I went a couple times, and some of you guys might know my friend Bazanti. Bazanti actually was sparring with Jeremy. I got bad luck with Jeremy's just beating me up. You know, the other Jeremy, the one that accidentally died, R.I.P., he pushed me into a garbage can, and I got stuck in it. Almost for probably for 20 minutes, I was stuck in this garbage can. People were laughing at me. So just like this other Jeremy that beat me up, everyone was laughing at me. Well, I'm not a fighter. I don't know. But yeah, I got bad luck with Jeremy's. And I've traveled all around the world. I feel like America's a dangerous country. You're more likely to get punched in the face in America than anywhere else, I think. Americans will just punch you. The only time I've ever had an altercation while traveling, it was in the Middle East. And I was at Petra, which is a really cool archaeological site in Jordan. Beautiful, man. I took LSD at Petra. That was a crazy story. But yeah, there was a lot of animal abuse. And it's mostly just these local families that sort of hustle around the area. You know, they hustle the tourists and give camel rides and horse rides. And there was this donkey that was tied up. For some reason, I don't know why it was tied up. It was tied up on this little rope, and it couldn't really move. And these kids that were maybe 17, 18, 19 were throwing rocks at this donkey. And this is the only time I almost got into an altercation. I could not say anything. I couldn't not say anything. I wasn't on acid. I was sober. I took acid the next day. But which is a dangerous thing to do, is take acid in a Middle Eastern country. I don't know what the laws are like there, but I met some Germans. Or I think they might have been Dutch. I can't really tell by the accents. I get them a little confused sometimes. But yeah, these guys gave me some LSD, and by the grace of God, I was able to take LSD at Petra. But yeah, these kids, we didn't get violent, but I went up to them and I was like, I'm gonna throw rocks at you if I watch you do this again. And they kind of just told me to fuck off, and then they walked away. But yeah, that's the only other. Also, I got into a fight in high school once, and it was actually because of Dylan. So we were out in the hallway playing guitar because we had music class, and we were just riffing outside in the hallway, and Dylan said something to this kid, Randy. He said, "Hey, Randy," or something, "you idiot." I don't know what he said, but Randy was like, "What'd you say?" And Dylan was like, "It was Dakota." And I was like, you know, Dylan's big, so I was just like, yeah, pussy. Randy, if that's even your name. And then he punched me too. Dylan didn't do anything. Thankfully, I could kind of hold my own with this kid. No one ever messed with me after in high school because of this fight. I beat him up a little bit, but still he just punched me in my face. This was the first time I think I've been punched in the face outside of Jeremy. And Dylan didn't do anything. I'm still mad at him for that. And that was like 8 years ago or something, 9 years ago. But yeah, I don't know. Taking acid at Petra was crazy. It was like being inside of a crashed alien spaceship. It's the only way I can explain it. I don't know if you know what Petra is, but you should Google some pictures of it because it's insane. And man, I just walked around and was just like in awe. You could, because on acid is weird. I don't know if you guys ever have taken acid before, but it takes you to some weird places. I could almost put myself back in time, back into the Petra days. You can like look at the ground, and you can see the grooves in the road from the chariots that used to ride on those roads. It's really cool. It's a really cool thing, you know. I made a video about that actually. You can watch me taking acid at Petra. It got real satanic towards the end of the day, because you're kind of in this biblical area. Jordan is, where Moses is supposed to have been buried, and Moses is my favorite mystic actually. You guys ever heard the story about Moses and the burning bush? Moses, he didn't. People say he didn't smoke it. People get mad when I say he was smoking a bush. But come on, guys. What's the only other context that story makes sense in? Moses was just walking around, and there was this talking bush that just happened to be on fire. Moses was getting high and communicating with, I don't know, his higher self or he's accessing some deeper levels of consciousness and having a religious experience. That's what was happening. That's the only way that context makes sense, is that Moses was getting ripped and communicating with God. And so it felt real biblical there. And it seemed almost like the locals are kind of creepy. Not like only because I was on acid they seemed creepy. They wear like face paint, like dark eye makeup, and they kind of look like Pirates of the Caribbean. They're called Bedouins, and they're the local people there that were living in Petra back in the day, and you know that's where their lineage comes from. And they're actually really beautiful people. You know, really beautiful skin, sandy skin, and bright hazel eyes. But it's very biblical there. It looks like it, it feels like it, and you know the people are still doing biblical stuff. So it felt satanic because they were all kind of like, it seemed like I was walking through some like graveyard, and these spirits were trying to just tickle my desires, because the sun was going down, and this place is runic, so it looks like it's, it looks thousands of years old because it is. So it looks like the bones of something. It looks like the cemetery or like some post-apocalyptic civilization, and these guys are sort of just wandering around, floating around, and they're like calling at you as you walk past, like, hey, come over here. Sort of like that opening scene of Aladdin where that guy's like, come with me, and he opens his little coat and he's got a bunch of trinkets and stuff like that. It's really like that. These guys are trying to just sell you stuff, and like swords and really peculiar trinkets and objects, mystical, mysterious artifacts. And it just really felt dark. They were lurking the bones of this place, sucking out whatever life was left in it. It didn't seem like this place was respected in its sacredness. It seemed like they were just leeches trying to get money from the tourists that came there. And that's just my perception on acid. I'm sure these guys feel such a connection to this place. But, or maybe not. They're just beating the shit out of animals there. I don't know how sacred they can think it is, but Petra was great. I would love to go back to Petra. There was one point where I left Petra and I had to drive on acid, which I don't ever recommend, but my hotel was only a couple blocks away. And yeah, maybe I'll cut that part out. I don't know if I can say that out loud. But all this whole podcast is incriminating. Jesus. Allegedly, none of this stuff actually happened. This is all just, this is all parody. This whole podcast is a parody. Don't believe anything I say. So I had to drive back to my hotel, but I wanted to let it wear off a little bit, so I waited, and I just I walked off into the desert. And if you've ever seen Passion of the Christ or something like that, it looks like that. There's nothing around, and it's just like I don't know, scary looking place when you're on acid. And I closed my eyes to meditate, and all these kind of crazy Doctor Strange visions started to happen, like sacred geometry and Mayan patterns and stuff were emerging behind my eyelids. And then I decided, okay, I feel okay enough to drive, and I had a ticket for parking in the wrong spot, so I'm not actually allowed to go back to Jordan because I didn't realize inside my passport they stamped on there, contact local police department, and I just I didn't see it. They stamped it upside down, and I just never paid attention to it because I don't look at my passport upside down. Yeah, I got a parking ticket, and I'm assuming that's why they told me to contact the police station. And maybe I'll pay it. I want to go back to Jordan. I like that country. But yeah, man, I've seen some crazy stuff growing up here in Detroit. I feel like most people here, they don't make it out. I feel like in a way I kind of made it out. All my friends kind of just got sucked into life. And not that I didn't get sucked into life too, but I sort of, they're all their parents. You know what I'm saying? They're all turned into their parents. Not all of them. My closest friends are actually doing cool stuff. Like Baturin, the one that, if he ever comes on this podcast, I guarantee he'll tell that same story of the senior prank, because that's like, we tell that story all the time. It's hilarious, and I do feel bad for the girl that busted her ass, but, you know, she's okay. She survived, so we can laugh about it. Comedy, it's comedy, guys. It's okay to laugh at things sometimes. It's how we get by. It's how we keep ourselves from not getting depressed or overwhelmed, is by making light of stuff. And, you know, don't take it too serious. We're all going to die. It's all temporary. And if you're spending all your time just being offended or being upset, you might die sooner. So be happy, be loving, be lighthearted. But yeah, a lot of people got caught up in drugs, and, you know, the bad kind of drugs. Some drugs are good, I think. You know, I like some drugs. I never took any crazy drugs. Like, I've never done cocaine, and I tried ketamine once, but didn't really see the appeal. I tried MDMA, which actually I think has very profound spiritual benefits if you don't have an addictive personality. I've tried, I just recently tried nitrous, right? Is that a thing? NOS? Like whippets? I tried that with Psych Substance in Canada. Man, he had me trying all kinds of stuff like kratom or kratom. Fuck, I was puking that stuff up in his toilet all night. Apparently you're only supposed to, I don't even actually, I'm not going to talk about doses because I don't know anything about kratom, and I don't want to talk about drugs like I have any idea. And I don't want to give any sort of advice for that stuff. But yeah, that stuff made me puke. So there's some good drugs and there's some bad drugs. You know, that's drugs. The word drug is a blanket term. There's a lot of things you could categorize a drug. Caffeine, fast food, sugar, marijuana, cigarettes, Red Bull, girls, Netflix, chocolate. I don't know. Everything can be kind of a drug. I think as long as you can handle things and not get kind of carried away and not get dependent on things, maybe it's okay to try everything once, or don't. I don't know. Don't take my advice. I don't know. I gave a Hindu monk LSD once, and that was a crazy story. Because I'm really inspired by Ram Dass. And Ram Dass, if you guys don't know who Ram Dass is, he was a Harvard professor back in the 50s. He was called Richard Elbert then. He's a white guy. And he had a crazy mushroom experience, and then he had crazy LSD experiences that were just blowing his mind. You know what I'm saying? He was having these insane spiritual realizations and expansions of consciousness and deepening of self-awareness. And he wanted to know what was going on, and he had come across some Vedic scripture and some Buddhist scripture. So he was like, I'm going to go to Asia because these guys clearly have a map of this experience already, and maybe they could help me understand what's going on. I think he was reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and he was like, oh my God, this lines up with my psychedelic experiences, almost like it seems like they're writing what was happening to me. And that's kind of how I felt about the Bhagavad Gita. You know, I had a crazy mushroom trip that lines up with some of the things that the Bhagavad Gita says. And so these people have a clear history of maybe not psychedelic use, but they have a history of going inward. Thousands of years of these methods and traditions of exploring inward. In the West, we are a material culture. We figure ourselves out through external means. You know, we don't ever look inside for answers. We look outside for answers. We get stoned. We become dependent on material objects rather than figuring it out, the root of the problem, which is usually some internal thing. And the Buddha said that we're all just attached. We are attached, and that keeps us in this loop of desire. And this desire comes from a false identification of self. We think we are something that we aren't. We think we are an individual, but Ram Dass says we aren't an individual. We are the entire universe. We are everything, even beyond that. We are the it. There's a Sanskrit saying, Tat Tvamasi, which means you are it. It. Ram. Someone once told me that Ram, backwards, Mar means it. So Ram. I don't know if that's what it actually means, but someone told me that in Varanasi. Ram, it means it. It. You are it. Everything. You are the ground. You are the trees that help you breathe. The sunshine that gives your body the energy and nutrients it needs to survive, along with everything else, you know. We are not separate from this process that is happening in the universe. There is a flow of patterns that the universe is producing, and that's us, man. We are that. And so Ram Dass went to India just trying to figure out something, you know, maybe these guys can tell me something. And he met Maharaji, Neem Karoli Baba, who's dead now, but who is a profound mystical saint who was said to have sort of magic powers in a way, you know, magical powers. He could read your mind. He could, there's some stories about him bringing people back from the dead or manifesting food, kind of Jesus-like stories. And I've met people that have been with Neem Karoli Baba, like Ram Dass, or like Raghu Marcus, or like Krishna Das, or like Mohan Baba. I've been with people that you know, Ram Dass got his name from Neem Karoli Baba. Raghu, Krishna Das, all these guys got their name from Neem Karoli Baba. He gave them these spiritual Indian names, mostly because, you know, Indians have trouble with Western names. But it is sort of like a spiritual, symbolic rebirth to be given a name by a saint. For example, you know, I got a name from a guru of mine, a teacher of mine, Sham Sundar Das Baba, who Krishna Das and Raghu actually took me to meet. And Ram Dass has a picture of Sham Sundar Das on his little altar in his living room, which I found really cool. Sham Sundar Das gave me the name Gajanandas, which is a name for Ganesh. It means a devotee of Ganesh. He actually gave me the name Ganesh first, but I was like, I don't really want to be introducing myself as Ganesh. I don't feel like a Ganesh, but I've grown on it. Gajanandas. So we gave this Baba that we met in the jungle LSD. Someone that we were with just happened to have LSD. He was curious about it. The Baba was asking us questions about it, like, what is this? You know, I hear you guys talk about this. We were calling it samadhi medicine. Samadhi is sort of like a deep meditation state where you just are lost in oneness and bliss. And we were calling it samadhi medicine because that's what it does to us. We merge into God, and you know, we were saying this thing is going to communicate God to you. You're going to meet God if you eat this tab. So he was like, curious about it. We gave it to him, and he went on this crazy adventure. You know, he took it before we even could properly explain to him what was going to happen. He just took it, put it on his tongue, put his hand up, said Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, and he just walked away. And he smoked some weed. He hopped on his motorcycle, went for a ride. And yeah, I mean, he acted like it affected him a little bit. He was being silly and kind of a little quick. He was being fast and talking fast, and I caught him. He was meditating and stuff. You know, he would walk away from us and go off and just sit there. And we tried to stop him from riding his motorcycle, but you can't stop a man sometimes on a mission. So you can just join him. You can follow a man on a mission, but you can't stop him. So I've actually made a YouTube video documenting this whole thing because I was like, this is too perfect to not document. And the next day, we asked him, we were like, so tell us about your experience. We're really curious, like, because we were talking it up. Because LSD for us, you know, this is our doorway to God. This is our direct telephone line to higher consciousness. And we said, was this good for meditation? That was the question we asked. Was this good for meditation? And he looked at us and literally actually laughed. He actually laughed at us. And he said, I don't need this for meditation. My entire life is meditation. My entire life is meditation. This little tab, he was calling it a high-class drug. He's like, these Americans gave me a high-class drug. I had someone translate the video. But he said, this tab is for people that don't experience God and everything. It's for people that don't experience God and everything. So that was basically kind of what Neem Karoli Baba said to Ram Dass. When Ram Dass gave Neem Karoli Baba Maharaji LSD, nothing happened to him. Nothing happened to him at all. And some people say that's because he's already there. These guys have such a deep, profound meditation practice. You know, they're not bombarded with the stuff that we're bombarded with here. You know, social media, just a social life, jobs, school, girlfriends, bills, advertisements, culture, all this kind of stuff that we're just born into, that we're thrown into. These guys don't have that. They have these thousands of years of traditions to tap into, and they're in quiet jungles where, you know, they don't have anything to do. And Maharaji told Ram Dass, he said he would always use Jesus as a metaphor, which made those guys mad, because those guys, they left America. They're like, we don't want to talk about Jesus. We left our traditions. We want to give us something juicy, baby. But Neem Karoli Baba would always bring them back to their own traditions and talk to them about Jesus, which is a little bit weird for a Hindu teacher, you know. And he said, LSD is good for meditation if you are in a cool place, a colder place, and you are alone, and your mind is turned towards God. Then LSD, it can be useful. And he said it can take you and it can put you in a room with Jesus. And you get to hang out with Jesus for a couple hours, but you have to leave. And he looked at Ram Dass and he said, it's better to become Jesus than it is to just hang out with him. So it's better, I guess, to become the LSD instead of taking it. It's better to be in those places, you know, to get to those places naturally, because we have the capacity of doing that, I think. And, you know, actually we do. If you look at the psychedelic state versus someone that can get into deep meditation states on a brain scan, it's very similar, the effects on the brain. And, you know, I kind of think that Jesus came back. You know how everyone's waiting for Jesus to come back? I kind of think Jesus did come back. He didn't come back in the form of a human. You know, why would he come back in the form of a human? We crucified him when he came as a human. So he's going to come as a material object, I think, this time, that awakens people. I think LSD was the second coming of Christ. And we crucified him again. God damn it. But yeah, what other way for God to reemerge into a material culture, other than, you know, coming in the form of a material object. It's interesting. I don't really believe in Jesus. I mean, I believe in the word of Jesus, the things he said. And I've been to Jerusalem. I've been to the tombs of Jesus. And I love the stories, and I love the myths, and I love culture, and I love learning about the stuff. But maybe he was real. I don't know. You know, they're actually, the first record of Jesus wasn't until like a generation or two after he had died, like 30 years after he died is the first kind of records you get of Jesus. You would think that a man performing miracles, the most significant person to ever walk the face of the planet, some would say. You think people would be documenting this like crazy. But, you know, then again, you have the Romans destroying stuff, and you have most people are illiterate and sort of passing down knowledge through stories and that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's important or not whether Jesus was a physical being or not. I think his message is potent regardless. And I think the Bible has some fucked up things in it. Those things aren't to ignore. But I think it's okay to cherry pick if you can align with something. As long as you just don't get too lost in the dogma and start, I don't know, owning slaves and cutting the hand off your wife if she abuses you or something. You know, some people think that my guru, Shamsundar Das Baba, it's a mouthful. Some people think that he has some special powers. And I've never really experienced it directly. I mean, there's been some weird synchronicities. I'm not going to lie. There has been some very bizarre synchronicities around him. And some people think that he can read minds and do this kind of stuff. And there's actually a story of Shamsundar Das bringing someone back to life. You know, there's a lot of black magic in India. It's a lot of, because, you know, Shiva is, it represents death, the destroyer. Shiva is he represents the destruction aspect of all things, and not in like an evil kind of way, but just in like a true death is approaching kind of way, like a reality check. The fire. Shiva is the fire, and which is good. You know, we need the fire to burn the old to resurrect the new. You know, they say a forest fire is actually beneficial for the ecosystem. It regrows and rejuvenates itself after something like that. So Shiva is that energy. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's never really read my mind, at least directly, in the way that Maharaji could kind of read minds. Like if you read the stories in Be Here Now, Ram Dass's book, Neem Karoli Baba was just straight up reading his mind, like straight up just giving it to him, blowing his little Harvard professor's head. You know, Ram Dass, because he got fired from Harvard for giving someone acid. Man, they got the coolest story. You got to look up the Ram Dass and Timothy Leary story. There's a documentary, or a couple of documentaries actually, on YouTube, or not YouTube, but Netflix. That Dying to Know. That's a good one. And the other one is, I think, is Going Home or something like that. But watch Dying to Know. Ram Dass and Timothy Leary had the craziest stories. I'm so inspired by it. So they got fired from Harvard because Ram Dass is bisexual and he had a crush on one of his students, you know, so he gave him some acid. They were only allowed to give acid to graduates. But Ram Dass slipped up, gave one of his students LSD, and word got out and he got fired. And then Timothy Leary was basically campaigning for LSD and starting a big fuss. He was going to prison. You want to know the coolest fact about Timothy Leary? So Timothy Leary was a psychologist. These dudes were Harvard psychologists, like the most legit of the legit you can get in our society as far as social status goes. And Timothy Leary, he went to jail. He went to prison. They got him. They got his ass for, you know, being a martyr and being a rebel and turning people onto acid, basically being one of the forefront leaders of the hippie movement and the psychedelic movement in the 60s and 70s. And so they took him to prison for having a couple joints, I believe. They found a couple joints. They raided his house, found a couple joints, took him to prison for it. When you go to prison, you have to take a test to determine your level of security. And this places you in different areas in the prison. You know, a dangerous person would be in maybe solitary confinement or something like that. But Timothy Leary actually wrote this test that the prison was using. This is his test. So when he was being evaluated, he got the lowest security because he knew all the answers, because he is a Harvard psychologist that wrote the test for the prison systems. So he gets placed in the lowest level security, and he breaks out of prison. How cool. How cool is that, man? These guys these are psychedelic warriors that were really trying to raise consciousness and spread this tidal wave of awareness through American culture. And they did. And we are an echo of that. If you're watching this podcast, we are an echo of that. That's us, baby. We're bouncing off the cultural mountains that these guys built for us. So, Ram Dass goes to India, and he's actually supposed to hang out with Alan Watts. How cool is this story? He was supposed to hang out with Alan Watts in Tibet, but decided against it, and that's when he met Maharaji, Neem Karoli Baba. I always like to think what would have happened if he went to hang out with Alan Watts instead. You know, who would Ram Dass be? Where would I be? Where would we all be? But some people in our satsang, some people in our little group, believe that Sham Sundar Das Baba is actually a reincarnation of Neem Karoli Baba. You know, I don't believe in that too much, but I guess if the universe, if everything happens for a reason, I think that he might be a sort of a byproduct of that meeting, of all these guys meeting Neem Karoli Baba. Just like I said, we are an echo of that. I feel like my guru, Sham Sundar Das Baba, is he's a byproduct of them meeting Maharaji. And you know, Krishna Das and Raghu took me to meet Sham Sundar Das Baba. And these guys have been going in India since the 70s. These guys, you can meet tons of gurus. I'm doing air quotes right now for those of you not watching, but there's tons of gurus in India. And they're all mostly just people running away from their responsibilities in life. And hardly any of them are doing a deep meditation practice. But this guy's different. Sham Sundar Das Baba he's different. He is so consistent in his love. And it sounds, you know, we're not used to being vulnerable here in America, so it's like you're hanging out with some guy because he loves you, some guy you met in the jungle, you just like being around him because he loves you, you weirdo. But I'm telling you, man, he just gives everybody such a consistent love. One of the devotees that have been following him since he was like 15, because he left home when he was a kid and just started meditating in caves and just being a freak, basically, you know, practicing meditation. Maybe if past lives are real, this dude had a real serious devotion to spiritual practice in his past life, because he is on a different level, and being around him sort of sucks you into that different level. So this guy that followed him since he was a kid actually murdered somebody. There was 2 families fighting, and one of these families killed this guy's brother, and they had to go to court for it. So the guy shows up to court to try to lock up the guys that killed his brother, but instead he shoots them in the courtroom, kills both of them in the courtroom, runs away, never gets caught, moves to the jungle, runs away to the jungle, finds Sham Sundar Das Baba in the jungle as a kid by himself, and he's like, what the fuck is this crazy kid doing out here by himself in a cave? So, and he sees him doing meditation. And Indians are very superstitious people and very spiritual people, so they are very humble to these kind of people that are doing this, especially a kid that is showing such a profound practice. So he says that Sham Sundar Das Baba saved his life, changed his life. So that's a cool story. I got to meet that guy. That was cool. Some crazy things, though. Some weird synchronicities that Sham Sundar Das Baba has shown is... We were talking about Jesus being in India, because that's kind of a thing that we are just into. Me and like my couple of my friends that hang out in India or hang out with Ram Dass. We always talk about, because there's myths all throughout northern and southern India that Jesus actually went to India, and ironically, you find one of the oldest churches ever. It's about 52 or 53 years AD. So only 50 years after Jesus died, you find an ancient church in southern India, a St. Thomas church doing an ancient form of Christianity, no idol worship, just doing a really, so when these missionaries were coming to India to spread Christianity, they showed up and there was already Christians there, and they're like scratching their heads like, what the fuck? So people think that Jesus went to India, and a lot of people worship Jesus as a Hindu saint. Actually, he's got a different name there. I think it's Isha, and they even have a tomb for him where they believe that he's buried in Kashmir. And the locals will point you, if you say, hey, where's Jesus buried? The locals will say, oh, Jesus was a great yogi. That's where his tomb is this way. I'll take you to it. So we always talk about that, and we've never heard Shamsundar Das talk about Jesus, because like I said, it's you don't really get too many gurus talking about Jesus. But we went to go visit him, and he just randomly says, we were talking about it earlier, and none of us mentioned it. We all show up together, and Shamsundar Das Baba just looks at us and he goes, Jesus did tapasya in India. He said Jesus came to India and did spiritual practice, just out of nowhere. And that kind of blew our minds a little bit. But I'm a little skeptical, so I'm like, it could just be anything. But another cool story, Baba took us to this ancient temple out in the jungle. Like, we're like 3.5 hours deep in the jungle. There's nothing around. But at this temple, there's a bunch of people there. I don't know how they get food or what these yogis are doing. They just meditate all day. I have no idea how they survive. But they're just at this crazy temple. And this video is on my YouTube channel. There's a cave there that they built this temple around. And there's a myth that this cave leads you to the underworld because it's so deep that when you go into it, it's deep and dark, and you just get lost. So people die going in there. And so Baba, this is his temple now. It was given to him. He blocked it off so people can stop dying. But so this place has a really mystical sort of energy to it. And what was I telling the story? Oh yeah. So Baba was giving me the name Gajanandas. How I just told you he gave me that name. And my mom was going through a lot because my grandma had just died. When I was in India, I got to miss my grandma's funeral because I was traveling in India and I couldn't fly home. And it just happened, And then my grandpa was getting ready to die, and he died a few months later after my grandma. So my mom was going through a real rough time, and she just got divorced. My stepdad was cheating on her. So, fuck my stepdad. Yeah, he was an asshole. My whole life. He was a dickhead. And he was cheating on my mom. So my mom, she was going through a lot. And I was like, Mom, I want to get you something from India, like a gift. What do you want me to get you? My mom doesn't know shit about India. I always thought she would say, like, bring me a Buddha or, I don't know, an Om or something like that. And she said very peacefully almost, she goes, I would really like a Ganesh. And I was like, that's a weird one to ask for, a Ganesh. I don't ever talk about Ganesh. If anything, I talk about Shiva or Krishna or Hanuman. So she's never heard me talk about Ganesh. I said, okay, I'll get you a Ganesh. And I bought her this really beautiful hand-carved Ganesh from wood. And so this is like a week prior to me being at the ancient temple where I'm at now. Baba has no idea about this story, and he's giving me a name. And he looks at me and he goes, your name is Ganesh. Ganesh Das. And I was just like, of course, of course. That's my mom. My mom said, bring me home a little Ganesh, and she was so worried about me. So, and again, like, that's just a little synchronicity. It's not like he was subliminally trying to communicate some message to my mom, but just cool little stories like that just kind of add to the mystique of Indian spirituality. And I don't know. I've hung out with him a couple times, and he's a really interesting person. I've hung out with some crazy gurus. Like on the last episode, I told you about Kashi Baba, the guy that took us to go find a dead body in the Ganga. He's a maniac, man. Kashi Baba. Kashi Baba, I asked him if he's ever seen any demons, because I don't know, he's doing these crazy rituals like meditating on top of dead bodies. He's actually ate a dead body before. For those of you that don't know, there's some crazy stuff in India. And there's what's called a Gori, which is a spiritual tradition. And I don't think Kashi Baba would consider himself a devoted practitioner of Agora, but he's done some of these rituals before. And I was like, Kashi Baba, have you ever seen any demons or anything like that? Because you're doing this crazy stuff. And he said, yeah, he did. He said, yeah, I've seen some demons. One time I was walking down the street, he said, and I saw a 10-foot shadow being with fangs. And it just had no definition besides sort of a mouth that just snarled and sort of scary. And he said it was so scary he just fell to his knees and he was praying to Kali, like, Kali Ma, why show this to me, Kali Ma? That's what he was telling me. He was just saying, what are you showing this to? What did I do for you to show this to me? Why are you coming to me in this form? Oh, Kali Ma, the great goddess of death. And he said he just offered flowers and did puja in that area for the next 10 days or the next week or something. He said it never happened again. But I thought that was an interesting little story. I don't know if I believe in demons. Maybe they exist. I don't know. I've had some crazy experiences on psychedelics of like communicating with spirits. I think you can communicate with different realms of consciousness. And whether or not those are in you and it's just like some kind of dream world that seems real. Because like if you're in a dream world, you can communicate with demons or beings and it feels real. Like it feels just as real as this. So I think psychedelics can put you in states like that, into the astral dimensions where the spirit world, like Maria Stabina, this lady on my shirt, the mushroom priestess, she was communicating with spirits through mushrooms. So that's what she said, at least. Kind of like Moses. Like I think Moses was smoking DMT. To a bush, I think he was smoking in a DMT-rich acacia bush, which is found in the Middle East where Moses would have been. So I think these people were just getting high and having hallucinations or sort of an occult-like experience. And yeah, they're tripping balls and getting thrown into altered states of awareness. And I've been there. It's a strange ocean to navigate in. There's all kinds of life swimming around. Like this one time I smoked DMT and I was thrown into an operation table, like a cosmic operation table, and I had these snakes ripping open my stomach and clearing out these dark negative energy blockages I had inside of my energy system, in my torso, I guess, or something. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense, but these rainbow serpents were just ripping me apart. It was almost like an alien abduction. That was really weird. DMT is a weird one. These plants are strange. I don't totally understand why they give you the experiences they give you. I like to think, especially mushrooms. Mushrooms, I like mushrooms more than something like DMT because DMT is so overwhelming and so powerful, it just hits you. It just hits you and you don't know what's going on. You just kind of got to figure out how to hang on for dear life. Whereas mushrooms, you can kind of navigate the waters a little bit easier. You can doggy paddle, You can keep your head above water. And they're actually only one chemical different in their chemical compound. Only one oxygen chemical differentiates DMT from psilocybin, which is the active and psychoactive chemical in psychedelic mushrooms. So these are very close structurally. And mushrooms, I don't know. You know, we are fungal bodies. We evolved from mushrooms. Some of the first land creatures were fungal creatures. The oldest fossils we find are mushrooms. And we evolved from that, you know, just after billions and billions of years of evolution, we have, you know, the variety of life has stemmed from that. And I think the reason why we have these crazy experiences, I think that maybe we're tapping into the intelligence of the mushroom or the intelligence of the plants. And I mean, because the mushroom has had such a long history of evolution, billions of years of genetic information to be passed down in its evolutionary timeline. It just has so much. It has so much, and because we are distant relatives, when we take it, we react with it in a way that is, we're tuning in to our genetic code. We share a genetic code with these beings. So we're communicating with the similarities of our DNA. We're speaking with our connections that we have, that are this is just a theory, but I think that because we are fungal bodies, when we take a fungal psychedelic, it's speaking to the place in us that resonates genetically with the place in itself. So the fire in the genes that match up, they connect with ours, and boom, we get this thunderstorm of this electrical storm of information and downloads. That's just a theory. I don't know. Who fucking knows what those deep states of the psychedelic experience are? And I don't know why everyone doesn't have spiritual experiences. Like Dylan, old fat Dylan, man, he can take 10 grams of mushrooms and be all right. He can be all right, bro. He don't need to. He's got an iron stomach. Dylan, yeah, man, he can trip balls, and he'll just be laughing. He'll think it's funny. He don't speak to God or nothing like that. Where I can take 3 grams of mushrooms and I'm in a different universe. I don't know why it's different for different people. But yeah, I don't know. Where are we at? Ooh, we're at an hour now. So that's the end of another podcast. Sorry I didn't answer any questions. We just got to talking. We'll answer some questions in the next episode 3. So if you want to be featured in the podcast, or you have a story to share, did someone beat you up in high school, or did you beat someone up in high school? What was your high school experience even like? Did you do anything crazy? I was totally sober, so I didn't do nothing wild until I turned 21. Until I took mushrooms. That was the first crazy drug I took. I'm still bouncing off that too. And that was years ago. Yeah, so share with me some kind of crazy story. I want to know what's going on in your life, and yeah, tell us something. aplaceforhumans@gmail.com. aplaceforhumans. So we're going to end this podcast with a song by KRISHNA Das and Sham Sundar Das Baba. I filmed this in India. And yeah, I love KRISHNA Das. Give KRISHNA Das a listen. He's got some beautiful mantra music. If you're into Indian music, it'll help you transcend to higher levels of your thoughts, baby. It'll transcend your thoughts. You ever left your thoughts before? Well, KRISHNA Das is going to help you get there. He's going to undress you, not sexually, but spiritually. You want to get undressed spiritually by KRISHNA Das? Then I'm going to shut up so you can listen to this. Make sure to click subscribe. We're also on Spotify and trying to get on iTunes. I just said I was going to shut up, but I still got some stuff to say. That's it. Ram Ram.